The sun was dying again over Cedar Ridge, bleeding crimson and gold across the endless sky. Dust devils danced between the weathered buildings, carrying the scent of scorched earth and dried sage. The town sat like a collection of sun-bleached bones on the edge of nowhere, where civilization ended and the wilderness began. Clara Matthews pulled the last bolt of calico from the shelf, her fingers stiff from a long day's work at Henderson's general store. The fabric was coarse beneath her touch, nothing like the fine silks she'd once known back east, before Henry died, before everything changed. "That'll be all for today, Mrs. Matthews." Old Henderson called from behind the counter, his voice carrying that peculiar mix of pity and distance she'd grown accustomed to. A widow with a child was trouble in a town like Cedar Ridge. Bad luck, some said. Poor judgment, whispered others. Clara nodded, untying her apron with practiced movements. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Same time tomorrow?" "Lord willing." He didn't meet her eyes, busying himself with a ledger. Always the ledger when it came time to look at her directly. The walk home was mercifully short, past the saloon where piano music spilled onto the street like water from a broken dam, past the blacksmith's forge where the ring of hammer on anvil marked the hours better than any clock. Men tipped their hats out of habit, not courtesy. Women clutched their shawls tighter, as if widowhood might be catching. The small wooden house stood at the town's edge, where respectability ended and the wild began. It wasn't much. 2 rooms, a leaking roof, walls that let in the winter wind. But it was theirs. Clara pushed open the door, and there was Lily, all golden hair and gap-toothed smile, playing with the corn-husk doll Clara had made last Christmas. "Mama?" The child launched herself into Clara's arms, all knees and elbows and unconditional love. "Hello, my sweet girl." Clara buried her face in her daughter's hair, breathing in the scent of sunshine and innocence. 6 years old, and already her father's eyes looked back from that small face, gray-blue like storm clouds, full of questions Clara couldn't always answer. They ate supper by candlelight, beans and cornbread, same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. Lily chattered about the butterfly she'd seen, yellow as butter, and the neighbor's cat that had killed a snake. Such simple joys, Clara thought, watching her daughter's animated face. Such precious, fragile joys. The storm came with nightfall, rolling in from the mountains like God's own fury. Lightning split the sky in jagged white scars, and thunder shook the thin walls until the dishes rattled on their shelf. Rain hammered the roof in sheets, finding every crack, every weak spot. "Scared, Mama?" Lily whispered from her small bed in the corner. "Just God moving his furniture," Clara soothed, repeating the lie her own mother had told her. She tucked the threadbare quilt tighter around her daughter's shoulders. Nothing to fear, but fear had a way of proving liars of them all. Clara woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving only the drip-drip of water from the eaves. Something was wrong. The air felt different, charged with an absence she couldn't name. She lit a candle with trembling fingers. Lily's bed was empty. "Lily!" Her voice cracked on the name. "Lily? Honey?" The back door stood open, hanging crooked on its hinges. Rain had pooled on the floor. And there, dear God in heaven, small footprints in the mud, leading out into the darkness, and beside them, larger ones, boot prints, a man's boots. "Lily!" Clara plunged into the night, barefoot, her nightgown catching on the thorny bushes that grew wild behind the house. "My daughter is missing!" The words tore from her throat, raw and primal, swallowed by the vast indifference of the prairie night. She stumbled toward town, mud squelching between her toes, rain-soaked hair plastered to her face. "My daughter is missing! Please, someone help me!" Windows flickered to life, yellow squares of lamplight puncturing the darkness. Doors opened. Faces peered out. Some curious, some annoyed, all wary. "What's all this racket?" Sheriff Daniels emerged from his office, suspenders hanging loose, shirt hastily buttoned. "Lily, she's gone. Someone took her," Clara gasped, clutching at his sleeve. "The door, footprints. Now, Mrs. Matthews." The sheriff's voice held that patronizing tone she knew too well. "Children wander. She probably— Someone took her!" Clara's voice rose to a shriek. "There were boot prints!" A crowd gathered. The good people of Cedar Ridge in their nightclothes in judgment. She heard the whispers starting already. Should have remarried, given that child a father. What kind of mother sleeps through her own child being taken? That's what comes of living out there alone. "I'll get some men together," the sheriff said, though his tone suggested he was humoring a hysterical woman. "We'll have a look around." But Clara saw the glances exchanged, the subtle shaking of heads. A widow's child gone missing in the night. Must be her fault somehow. Always was. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and with it came the sound of hoofbeats. A lone rider emerged from the darkness, tall in the saddle, water streaming from the brim of his hat. Jake Thornton, the horse wrangler who kept to himself, who spoke little but observed much. He dismounted in one fluid motion, and Clara found herself looking up into eyes the color of winter bark. "Heard shouting," he said simply. His voice was low, roughened by wind and solitude. "Her daughter's missing," someone supplied. "Run off, most like." Jake's gaze never left Clara's face. She saw something there, in the depths of those dark eyes. Recognition, perhaps. The understanding of one who knew what it meant to lose. "She didn't run off," Clara whispered. "Someone took her." Jake nodded once, decisive. "Show me." They walked back through the mud, Clara's teeth chattering now from cold and shock. Jake studied the prints by lantern light, his face grave. Man's boots. Sure enough, heavy, deep heel. He straightened, moving fast, carrying something. "Carrying her." Clara's voice broke. "When did the storm pass? Maybe 2 hours ago? I don't know exactly. 2 hours. Jake stared out into the darkness, calculating. On foot, in this mud, carrying a child. They can't have gotten far. He turned to her, and his next words changed everything. "I'll find her. Ma'am, I swear it." "You don't even know us," Clara whispered. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of old pain quickly hidden. "Don't matter. Child's missing. That's all that needs knowing." Sheriff Daniels had managed to rouse a handful of men, though their enthusiasm was clearly dampened by the late hour and the victim's social standing. They carried torches that hissed and sputtered in the damp air. "We'll check the usual places," the sheriff announced. "The old mine, the swimming hole. Trail leads west." Jake interrupted. "Toward the mountains. Now, Thornton, I'm sure you mean well, but—" "Trail leads west," Jake repeated, already moving. "You can follow or not." Clara didn't hesitate. She fell in behind him, and after a moment's confusion, some of the search party followed. The tracks were clearer now, preserved in the rain-soft earth, small bare feet, lilies, and the heavy boots, joined after a few yards by hoof prints. "Horse was waiting here," Jake said, crouching. One rider took the child up with him. Clara's heart clenched. Her baby, carried off into the night by some faceless stranger. The vast darkness of the plain stretched before them, and for the first time since Henry's death, she felt the full weight of her isolation. Out here, life was cheap and justice scarce. Who would care about one small girl, daughter of a nobody widow? But Jake Thornton cared, or seemed to. He moved with purpose, reading the ground like others read books. And Clara followed, because what else could she do? Her child was out there somewhere in the enormous night, and this strange, silent man was her only hope of getting her back. The search party thinned as the hours wore on, men peeling away with mumbled excuses about work in the morning. Soon it was just Clara, Jake, and 2 others, the minister's son and the Mexican stable hand who'd always been kind to Lily. "Storms washed out the tracks," one of them said as they reached Rocky Creek, swollen with runoff. But Jake was already studying the bank, the way the reeds bent, the pattern of disturbed stones. "Crossed here," he said with certainty. "See how the mud's torn up on the far side? Horse struggled up the bank." Clara stared at the rushing water, black in the darkness, somewhere beyond. Her daughter was afraid. maybe hurt, certainly crying for her mama. The thought drove her forward into the current. Wait! Jake's hand caught her arm. Too dangerous in the dark. Water's running too fast. She needs me. She needs you alive. His grip was firm, but not unkind. First light's only a few hours off. We'll cross then. Pick up the trail. A few hours? Clara wrenched free. She could be dead in a few hours, or you could be dead in a few minutes, and what good would that do her? Jake's voice remained steady, but she caught something underneath, an echo of old grief. Man who took her wanted her alive, or he'd have done different. We'll find her, Mrs. Matthews, but we do it smart, or we don't do it at all. Clara wanted to scream, to rage against the logic of it. But he was right, and she hated him for it. Hated the whole world that had taken her husband and now her child. Hated the God who moved his furniture with such careless destruction. They made a rough camp on the creek bank, though Clara couldn't sit still. She paced, wearing a path in the wet grass, while Jake studied the far shore by lantern light. The other two searchers huddled by a small fire, speaking in low voices. "You have children, Mr. Thornton?" Clara asked suddenly. His shoulders tensed. Had. That single word, past tense, held a world of pain. Clara felt it like a physical blow. "I'm sorry. Was a long time ago." But his voice said otherwise. "How?" She shouldn't ask, but the darkness made her bold. "Comanche raid. Wife, too." He didn't look at her. "Found them 3 days later. But you didn't give up looking." "No." He finally met her eyes. "Never give up. Even when everyone says you should. Even when it seems hopeless. You never give up on family." The eastern sky was just starting to pale when they heard it. The distant whinny of a horse. Jake was on his feet instantly, head cocked, listening. It came again, carried on the pre-dawn wind. "That's not far," he said. "Maybe a mile, 2 at most." They crossed the creek in the gray half-light. Clara's skirts heavy with water, her feet numb with cold. But on the other side, clear as scripture, the tracks resumed. And there, Clara's heart leaped, a small piece of fabric caught on a mesquite thorn. She recognized it instantly. Lily's nightgown, torn from the hem. "Smart girl," Jake murmured, "leaving us signs." They pressed on as the sun climbed, painting the landscape in shades of gold and rust. The trail led into rougher country, where the plains gave way to ridges and arroyos. And there, in a grove of cottonwoods, they found what they were looking for. The cottonwood grove stood empty save for the remains of a cold campfire and more tracks. Several horses now, their prints overlapping in the dust. Jake dismounted, studying the signs with grim concentration while Clara fought the urge to scream her daughter's name into the morning air. 3 riders, Jake said quietly. "Joined up with our man here, rested a few hours, then moved on." He touched the ashes. Still warm underneath. "They're not far ahead." "Why?" Clara's voice cracked. "Why would anyone take her?" Jake's jaw tightened. "Could be they're looking for ransom. Or..." He didn't finish, but Clara heard the unspoken possibilities. The frontier was full of evil men who did evil things, especially to those who couldn't defend themselves. "We should head back," one of the remaining searchers said nervously. "Get the sheriff. Form a proper posse. By the time we do that, they'll be in the next territory." Jake replied, "Mrs. Matthews, you know how to use a rifle?" "Henry taught me." The memory stung, Henry patient and laughing as she missed target after target, until finally she didn't miss any more. Jake pulled his Winchester from its scabbard, checked the action, and handed it to her. "Stay close. These men, they're not cowboys gone wrong. These are deliberate tracks, organized. They knew what they were doing." The minister's son and the stable hand exchanged glances. "We'll go back," the younger man said. "Get help?" Jake nodded. "Tell the sheriff to wire the rangers. Tell him it's a kidnapping ring, not a runaway." He looked at Clara. "You sure about this? Could be dangerous." "She's my daughter." That was all the answer needed. They rode hard through the morning heat, following tracks that led deeper into the Badlands. The landscape changed. soft prairie giving way to harsh stone and shadow. Clara had never been this far from town, never seen the wild heart of the territory that swallowed men whole and spat out their bones. "Drink," Jake ordered during a brief rest, passing her his canteen. The water was warm, metallic, but Clara had never tasted anything so necessary. "Tell me about her," he said suddenly. "What?" "Your daughter. Tell me." Clara blinked, surprised by the request. She's 6, smart as a whip, always asking questions I can't answer. Why's the sky blue? Where do stars go in the daytime? She has her father's eyes, gray-blue, and this laugh that—" Her voice broke. "She laughs with her whole body, like joy is too big to keep inside." Jake nodded, his face softening almost imperceptibly. "My Sarah was like that, curious about everything. Used to follow me around the ranch, chattering like a magpie." He cleared his throat. "Good to remember them happy. Helps with the rest." They rode on, the sun climbing toward its zenith. Clara's skin burned beneath her thin dress, and her throat felt like sand. But she didn't complain. Somewhere ahead, Lily was suffering worse. "There!" Jake pointed to a smudge of smoke rising from a distant canyon. "That's them." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "What do we do?" "We get closer, scout their position. Then we get your girl back." He studied her face. "You scared?" "Terrified." "Good. Scared keeps you sharp. Just remember, these men, they're not expecting trouble from a woman. That's our advantage." They left the horses in a draw, approaching the canyon on foot. Clara's boots, hastily pulled on in last night's panic, rubbed blisters on her heels. But she barely noticed. All her focus narrowed to the sound of voices ahead. Rough male laughter that made her stomach turn. Jake held up a hand, then pointed to a cluster of rocks. They crept forward, and Clara bit back a gasp. 4 men lounged around a fire, passing a bottle between them. Their faces were hard, weathered by sun and violence. And there, Clara's vision blurred with tears, Lily sat huddled against a boulder, her small form wrapped in a dirty blanket, her golden hair matted with dust. $100, one of the men was saying. That's what Garrison pays for the pretty ones. Long way to San Antonio. Another replied, Brat's been crying all night. She'll quiet down. They always do. Clara started forward, but Jake's hand clamped down on her shoulder. Wait, he breathed in her ear. See the one by the horses? He's on watch. We need a plan. But Clara was beyond planning. Her child was 20 yards away, surrounded by men who spoke of her like livestock. The rifle in her hands seemed to pulse with possibility. I'll circle around. Jake whispered, Draw their attention. When I do, you get to Lily. Get her and run for the horses. Don't stop. Don't look back. What about you? His smile was grim. I've got accounts to settle with men like these. Go when I give the signal. He melted into the rocks, moving with a silence that spoke of long practice. Clara waited, every muscle tense, watching her daughter. Lily hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound. Was she hurt? Drugged? The thoughts tortured her as seconds crawled by. Then came a whistle, low and clear, from the far side of the camp. The men's heads snapped up. What was that? Probably just a bird. You jumpy... The gunshot cut him off. The sentry by the horses spun and fell. Clutching his shoulder, Jake emerged from cover, his Colt steady in his hand. Drop your weapons, he called. This doesn't have to go hard. Chaos erupted. The kidnappers scrambled for guns, cursing and shooting wild. Clara didn't think, just ran, sprinting across the open ground toward her daughter. Lily! The child's head jerked up, eyes wide with disbelief. Mama? Clara scooped her up, feeling the precious weight of her, alive and whole. But one of the kidnappers had seen them, was turning, raising his pistol. The Winchester bucked against Clara's shoulder. She'd fired without conscious thought, Henry's patient lessons taking over. The man stumbled back, his shot going wide, and Clara ran. Behind them, the firefight intensified. Jake had taken cover behind a wagon, trading shots with the remaining kidnappers. Clara didn't look back, just ran with Lily clutched against her chest, the child's tears soaking her shoulder. The horses were where they'd left them, stamping nervously at the sound of gunfire. Clara threw Lily onto Jake's mount, the steadier of the two, and swung up behind her. "Hold on tight, baby!" But as they wheeled the horse around, Clara saw Jake go down, red blooming across his shirt. Without thought, she turned back. "No, Mama!" Lily screamed. "Stay here! Don't move!" Clara slid from the saddle, rifle in hand. The remaining two kidnappers were advancing on Jake's position, confident now that their opponent was wounded. They didn't see Clara creeping along the canyon wall, didn't expect danger from a desperate mother. She shot the first one in the leg, dropping him screaming. The second spun toward her, but Jake, wounded as he was, managed to fire. The man crumpled. "Damn fool, woman," Jake gasped as Clara reached him. "Told you to run!" "Shut up!" She tore strips from her petticoat, pressing them against the hole in his side. "Can you ride? Do I have a choice?" Together they stumbled to the horses, where Lily waited, tears streaming down her dirty face. Clara helped Jake into his saddle, then mounted behind Lily, one arm around her daughter, the other steadying Jake as they rode. "There's a line shack," Jake managed through gritted teeth. 5 miles north. We can hole up there." The 5 miles felt like 50. Jake swayed in his saddle, face gray with pain, while Clara divided her attention between him and the trail behind them. But no pursuit came. Perhaps the wounded kidnappers had had enough, or perhaps they were in no shape to follow. The line shack was little more than 4 walls and a roof, but it had a well and a stock of basic supplies. Clara helped Jake inside, settling him on the narrow cot while Lily huddled in the corner, watching with huge eyes. "Bullet went through," Jake said as Clara examined the wound. "That's good. Just need to stop the bleeding." Clara had helped birth calves and foals, had sewn up cuts and treated burns, but this was different. This was a man who'd risked his life for her child, bleeding because of choices she'd made. "Why?" she asked as she worked. "Why did you come back for us? You could have kept riding when you heard me screaming in town. No one would have blamed you." Jake's eyes found Lily, who had crept closer, one small hand reaching out to touch his larger one. "Because I couldn't save mine," he said simply. "But maybe I could save yours." The afternoon wore on in a haze of blood and fever. Clara cleaned and bound Jake's wound, gave him whiskey for the pain, held his hand when the agony made him grip something fierce. Lily, resilient as only children could be, fell asleep against her mother's side, thumb in mouth like she hadn't done since she was 3. "Tell me about them," Clara said softly, as twilight painted the shack's walls purple. "Your family." Jake's voice was distant, dulled by whiskey and pain. "Sarah was 4, hair like corn silk, always in her eyes. Mary, my wife, she was always after her to tie it back. But Sarah would pull the ribbons out soon as her mother turned around." His smile was ghost-thin. "Little Jake was barely 2, just learning to run. Lord, that boy could find trouble in an empty room." "How long ago?" 7 years come September." He shifted, winced. "I was in town when it happened, getting supplies. Came back to smoke and ashes and—" He stopped. "Found them in the root cellar. Mary had tried to hide the children, but there wasn't enough time." Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. Tracked the war party for 2 weeks. Never found them. Sheriff said to let it go, said vengeance wouldn't bring them back. He was right, but I couldn't let it go. So I drifted, breaking horses, hiring out for roundups. Easier than staying in one place, building something that could be taken away again. Until tonight. Until tonight." He looked at her, really looked at her, and Clara felt something shift between them. "Your girl's safe now. That's what matters. Thanks to you. Thanks to you," he corrected. "You came back for me. Could have run, kept Lily safe. Most would have. You wouldn't have." "No," he agreed. "I wouldn't have." Night fell complete and quiet. Clara kept watch by the single window, the rifle across her lap, while Jake dozed fitfully. Lily whimpered in her sleep, and Clara smoothed her hair, humming the lullabies her own mother had sung in a safer, gentler world. Dawn broke harsh and bright across the Badlands, painting the rocks in shades of rust and gold. Jake's fever had broken during the night, though he remained weak, his face pale beneath the weathered tan. Clara had barely slept, dividing her vigilance between the window and her two patients. "We need to move," Jake said, struggling to sit up. "Those men might have friends. This shack's too exposed." "You're in no condition to ride," Clara protested, but she knew he was right. The line shack, which had seemed like salvation yesterday, now felt like a trap. Lily stirred, blinking in the morning light. "Mama, are the bad men gone?" "Yes, sweetheart." Clara pulled her close. "We're safe now." But Jake's eyes met hers over the child's head, and she saw the truth there. They weren't safe. Not yet, not until they were back in civilization, such as it was. They broke their fast on hardtack and water. Then Clara helped Jake to his horse. He moved like an old man, each step careful and pained, but his hands were steady on the reins. "Can you make it?" she asked. "Don't have much choice." He managed a wan smile. "Besides, I've ridden with worse. Took an arrow in the thigh once, rode 20 miles to the nearest town. This is nothing." But Clara saw the sheen of sweat on his forehead, the white-knuckled grip on the saddle horn. She kept Lily in front of her on her own mount, one arm secure around the child's waist, the other ready to steady Jake if needed. The sun climbed mercilessly as they picked their way through the broken country. Every shadow might hide an enemy. Every distant dust cloud could signal pursuit. Clara found herself remembering the early days with Henry, when they'd first come west full of dreams and ignorance. How naive they'd been, thinking the frontier would be their paradise. "Mama, I'm thirsty," Lily complained. "Soon, baby, we'll find water soon." But their canteens were nearly empty, and the landscape offered no mercy, just stone and scrub brush and the endless, punishing sky. Jake swayed in his saddle, and Clara pushed down the fear that he might fall, that she'd have to choose between helping him and protecting Lily. "There," Jake pointed with a shaking hand. "See that line of green? That's Willow Creek, water and shade." It seemed impossibly far, but they pressed on. The horses, sensing water, picked up their pace despite their exhaustion. When they finally reached the creek, Clara nearly wept with relief. While the horses drank, she helped Jake to a spot beneath the willows, then let Lily splash in the shallows, washing away the dirt and fear of the past day. The simple joy on her daughter's face as she played in the water made Clara's throat tight with emotion. "She's tough," Jake observed, watching Lily chase minnows. "Like her mother, I don't feel tough. I feel—" Clara searched for words. "Breakable, like glass that's already cracked." "Glass breaks," Jake said quietly, "but iron bends and springs back. Your iron misses. Matthews, whether you know it or not." Clara looked at him, really looked at him, even wounded and exhausted. There was a strength to him that went beyond the physical, a steadiness that made her feel less alone in this vast, hostile land. "Clara," she said. "My name is Clara. Jake." He offered his hand, and she took it, feeling the calluses, the warmth, the solid reality of human connection. They rested through the heat of the day. Clara cleaned Jake's wound again, pleased to see it was healing clean, no signs of infection. Lily napped in the shade, her small hand clutching her mother's skirt even in sleep. "Tell me about Henry," Jake said suddenly, "if you don't mind." Clara was surprised to find she didn't mind. He was a dreamer, always talking about the fortune he'd make, the empire he'd build. He read every pamphlet about the West, believed every word. She smiled sadly. He wasn't made for this life. Really, too gentle, too trusting, but he loved us fierce as any man could. How did he die? Pneumonia, 2 winters ago. He got caught in a blizzard, bringing supplies back from town. By the time he made it home, his lungs were full of ice. She picked at a loose thread on her skirt. I tried everything, poultices, teas, even sent for the doctor from Fort Worth. But there was nothing to be done. I'm sorry. The townspeople said I should go back east, find my family, but I couldn't. This was Henry's dream, and I felt like leaving would be betraying him somehow. Besides, where would I go? My parents disowned me when I married him, said I was throwing my life away on a no-account dreamer. Were they right? Clara considered this. No. Henry gave me 6 good years, and Lily, that's worth more than a lifetime of their approved choices. They mounted up again as the sun began its descent, wanting to cover more ground before dark. The trail was easier now. Following the creek through a series of small valleys, Jake seemed stronger, or perhaps he was just better at hiding his pain. "Riders," he said suddenly, pointing to a dust plume on the horizon. Clara's heart jumped. "The kidnappers? Wrong direction, and too many. Looks like a dozen or more." He squinted. Could be a posse, or could be trouble of a different kind. They found shelter in a grove of cottonwoods, watching as the riders approached. Clara held her breath, one hand on Lily, the other on the rifle. Then Jake relaxed. "It's all right. That's Sheriff Daniels in the lead. Looks like your friends made it back to town." The posse swept toward them in a cloud of dust and noise. Clara saw familiar faces, the minister, the banker, even some who'd turned away from her search the night before. Amazing how success changed people's memories. Mrs. Matthews. Sheriff Daniels reined in hard. "Thank the Lord. We feared the worst when Thompson and Miguel came back with their tale." "Jake's hurt," Clara said, cutting through the pleasantries. "He needs a doctor." The sheriff's eyes went to Jake, and something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or wariness. "Thornton, heard you took on 4 men single-handed." Mrs. Matthews did her share. Jake said quietly, more than her share. The ride back to town became a strange parade. The posse surrounded them, full of questions and exclamations. Lily, overwhelmed by the attention, buried her face in Clara's shoulder. Jake rode silent and apart, as was his way. "We found the kidnappers," one of the men reported. 2 dead, 2 wounded bad. They confessed to being part of a ring, stealing children for sale in Mexico. Sheriffs wired the rangers. Clara felt sick. Her baby, sold like cattle. If Jake hadn't been there, hadn't cared enough to help. "You're heroes," the minister declared. "Both of you. The town owes you a debt." But Clara heard the unspoken addition, a debt to the respectable widower who'd saved the fallen woman's child. She saw how their eyes slid past her to Jake, how the story was already changing in the telling. By tomorrow, she'd be the helpless female rescued by the strong man, instead of the mother who'd shot a kidnapper and ridden through hell for her child. As they neared town, Clara noticed Jake pulling back, falling behind the group. She slowed her own horse to match his pace. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just, this is your moment. Yours and Lily's. You don't need me complicating it." Complicating it? He gestured at the crowd gathering at the town's edge, drawn by the commotion. "You know how people talk. Widow woman riding with a man like me. They'll make it into something it's not. And what is it?" The question came out before Clara could stop it. Jake looked at her for a long moment, then away. "I don't know, but whatever it is, you don't need the gossip. You've got enough to deal with." They entered Cedar Ridge as the sun touched the horizon, painting the weathered buildings in forgiving shades of rose and gold. People lined the streets, some who'd refused to help now cheering like they'd been part of the rescue all along. Clara felt their eyes, heard the whispers starting already. "Look at her, covered in dirt. What kind of mother puts her child in such danger? At least the child's safe." At Henderson's store, Clara slid from her horse, lifting Lily down. Her daughter clung to her, overwhelmed by the crowd and noise. Jake had stopped at the edge of the gathering, clearly planning to slip away. "Jake!" Clara called. "Wait." He turned in the saddle, and she saw him wince at the movement. The doctor was pushing through the crowd, bag in hand, but heading for Clara and Lily. "No," Clara said firmly. "See to Mr. Thornton first. He's the one who's wounded." "I'm fine," Jake protested, but Clara was already guiding the doctor his way. "He was shot saving my daughter," she announced, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "He bled for us. The least we can do is tend his wounds." The doctor, faced with Clara's determination and the crowd's attention, had no choice but to examine Jake. What he found made him whistle low. "You rode all day with this? Man, you should be flat on your back." "Had things to do," Jake said simply. They helped him to the doctor's office, Clara on one side, the sheriff on the other. Lily trotted alongside, her small hand finding Jake's larger one. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered. Jake's weathered face softened. "You're welcome. Little miss, you were very brave." Mama was braver. She shot a bad man. The crowd stirred at this, and Clara saw the sheriff's eyebrows rise. The story was changing again. Truth creeping in around the edges of assumption. "That so?" Sheriff Daniels asked. "Had to," Clara said simply. "He was drawing on us." "Well," the sheriff cleared his throat. "Seems we all owe you both some apologies, and some thanks." But Clara wasn't listening to him anymore. She was watching Jake's face as the doctor worked, seeing the pain he'd been hiding all day. This man who'd lost everything had risked what little he had left for strangers, not for glory or reward, but because it was right. "I'll sit with him," she told the doctor. "Someone should, while you work." "Clara," Jake started to protest. "Hush," she said firmly. "It's decided." And so it was. As night fell over Cedar Ridge, as the crowds dispersed to spread their versions of the tale, Clara Matthews sat in the doctor's office holding Jake Thornton's hand while the doctor stitched his wounds. Lily curled asleep in the corner, safe and whole, while outside the window the stars emerged one by one, bearing witness to whatever was beginning between two broken souls in a hard land. The West was still wild, still dangerous. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new gossip, new struggles to survive. But tonight, in this small circle of lamplight, there was peace, there was gratitude, and there was, perhaps, the first fragile shoots of something that might grow strong enough to weather whatever storms were coming. 3 days had passed since their return to Cedar Ridge, and the town buzzed with talk of the rescue. Clara went about her work at Henderson's store, aware of the stares and whispers that followed her. Some looked with newfound respect, others with the same old suspicion, as if her moment of courage somehow made her more dangerous rather than less. Jake was recovering at the boarding house, though Clara had seen him only once since that night at the doctor's office. He'd been distant, polite, already rebuilding the walls that had crumbled during their desperate ride. She understood. In a town like this, reputation was currency, and hers was already bankrupt. "Mama, can we visit Mr. Jake?" Lily asked for the 10th time that morning. The child had bounced back with the resilience of youth, though she still woke crying in the night, reaching for Clara's hand. "He needs his rest, sweetheart, but I made him a drawing." Lily held up a piece of brown paper covered in careful pencil strokes. A tall figure on a horse, stick arms holding what might have been a gun. Before Clara could respond, the store bell chimed. An old Mexican man entered, hat in hand, moving with the careful dignity of one who'd learned to navigate Anglo spaces. "Senora Matthews?" "Yes, I am Miguel Herrera, my grandson. He rode with you that night, to search for your little one." Clara remembered, the stable hand who'd stayed when others left. "Yes, of course. Please tell him how grateful I am." "Is not why I come." The old man glanced around, then stepped closer. "There is talk. Senora, bad talk. Those men you caught, they have friends, brothers who don't forget." Clara's blood chilled. "What kind of talk?" "The kind that travels in cantinas and dark places. They say the Garrison gang will not let this insult stand. You and Senor Thornton. You embarrassed them, made them look weak." He pressed a small wooden cross into her hand. Be careful, Senora. Watch the shadows. After he left, Clara stood frozen, the cross warm in her palm. She'd been so focused on getting Lily back, she hadn't thought about what came after. The West had a long memory for grudges. Mrs. Matthews? Henderson's voice made her jump. You all right? Look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. But her hands shook as she returned to sorting fabric. That evening, Clara made a decision. After tucking Lily into bed, she walked to the boarding house, ignoring the impropriety of it. Some things were more important than gossip. Jake answered her knock, still moving stiffly but upright. His surprise at seeing her quickly shifted to concern when he saw her expression. What's wrong? She told him about Miguel's warning, watching his face harden with each word. Pack your things, he said when she finished. You and Lily, tonight. I know a ranch about 50 miles north. Good people. They'll take you in until... No. Clara. No? She lifted her chin. I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. This is our home, such as it is. I won't let them drive us out. These aren't the kind of men who make idle threats. The garrison gang's been running children across the border for years. You cost them money, reputation. They'll come. Then we'll be ready. Jake studied her face, and something like admiration flickered in his eyes. You sure about this? I shot one of them already. I'll do it again if I have to. It's not that simple. They'll come at night, when you're not expecting. Then I guess I'll need help learning to expect it. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Jake turned to look out the window at the darkening street. Why? He asked finally. Why are you really here? Clara considered lying, making up some practical excuse, but she was tired of that too. Because when I was at my lowest, when everyone else turned away, you didn't. Because you bled for my daughter. Because... She took a breath. Because I don't want you to disappear again. Lily asks for you every day. She draws pictures of you. She feels safe with you, and so do I. You don't know me. Not really. I know enough. Jake turned back to her, and the walls were down again. Just for a moment, she saw the loneliness there, the ache of it, matching her own. All right, he said quietly. I'll teach you, but we do this careful, smart, and if things get too dangerous, we'll face it together. Clara extended her hand. Partners? He took it, his grip warm and steady. Partners. The next days fell into a pattern. Clara worked at the store. Jake continued recovering, and in the evenings, they met at her house for lessons. He taught her to read sign, broken twigs, disturbed dust, the language of pursuit and evasion. He showed her how to barricade doors, create hiding spots, plan escape routes. Lily watched it all with solemn eyes, understanding more than a child should. Jake included her when appropriate, teaching her to recognize danger, to hide when told, to run without question. It's not right, Clara said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard. She should be worried about dolls and dresses, not survival. The frontier takes childhood early, Jake replied. But she's strong, like her mother. They were sitting closer than propriety allowed. But Clara found she didn't care. The solid presence of him beside her was worth more than the town's good opinion. Tell me about after, she said suddenly. After your family. What kept you going? Jake was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, habit, mostly. You wake up, you saddle your horse, you work. One day becomes a week becomes a month. Before you know it, years have passed and you're still breathing, even if you're not really living. And now? He looked at her, and she saw something new in his eyes. Hope, maybe, fragile as spring ice. Now I remember why living matters. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then Lily shrieked with laughter, breaking the spell, and Jake smiled, a real smile that transformed his weathered face. Pa used to catch fireflies with me, Lily announced, running up with cupped hands. Look, Mama, Mister, Jake, look! She opened her hands, and the insect flew free, blinking its tiny light into the darkness. "Beautiful," Jake said, but he was looking at Clara. A week passed, then 2. The town slowly adjusted to the new reality. Clara Matthews was no longer just the pitied widow, but the woman who'd shot a kidnapper. Jake Thornton was no longer just the silent horse wrangler, but the man who'd saved a child. Their evening meetings became common knowledge, spawning gossip both vicious and kind. "Let them talk," Clara said when Mrs. Wilson made a snide comment at the store. "I've got more important things to worry about." But the warning signs were there. Strangers in town who lingered too long. Horses on the ridge at sunset. The feeling of being watched that made the hair on Clara's neck rise. "They're scouting," Jake said grimly. "Testing our patterns, looking for weakness." When? Soon. He was right. It came on a moonless night, when clouds blocked the stars and the air hung heavy with the promise of storm. Clara woke to the creak of boards on the porch, not the settling of old wood, but the deliberate step of someone trying to be quiet. She slipped from bed, reaching for the rifle Jake had insisted she keep loaded and ready. Her hands were steady as she crept to Lily's corner, gently shaking her daughter awake. "Remember what Mr. Jake taught us?" she whispered. Lily nodded, eyes wide but calm, and slipped into the hiding spot they'd prepared, a false panel in the wall that led to a crawl space. The front door shuddered under a heavy blow. Clara positioned herself behind the overturned table they'd reinforced, rifle ready. Her heart hammered, but her hands remained steady. The door burst open, and 3 men rushed in. Clara fired. The rifle's kick familiar now from Jake's patient teaching. One man spun and fell. The others dove for cover, cursing. "Where's the brat?" one shouted. "We know she's here." Clara fired again, splintering wood near the speaker's head. "Get out of my house. Tough talk for a woman alone." "She's not alone." Jake's voice came from the back door, cold as winter wind. Clara heard the distinctive click of his Colt cocking. What followed was chaos, shouts, gunfire, the crash of breaking furniture. Clara lost track of Jake in the darkness, focused only on protecting Lily's hiding spot. A man lunged at her, and she swung the rifle stock, catching him in the jaw. He went down hard. Then, sudden silence. "Clara?" Jake's voice, strained but alive. "Here, I'm all right." He emerged from the shadows, and even in the darkness, she could see the blood on his shirt. Not from his old wound, fresh blood. "Jake!" "It's not bad." But he swayed, and she caught him, feeling the warm wetness spreading under her hands. "Lily," he managed. "Is she safe, hidden?" Clara helped him to a chair, then called softly, "Lily, sweetheart, you can come out now." The little girl crawled from her hiding place, tears streaming but silent as she'd been taught. She took in the scene, the intruders on the floor, Jake bleeding, her mother fierce and bloodied, with eyes too old for her years. "Is it over, Mama?" Clara gathered her close with one arm, keeping pressure on Jake's wound with the other. Outside, she could hear shouts, running feet. The gunfire had woken the town. "Yes, baby, it's over." But even as she said it, she knew it was only partly true. The immediate danger had passed, but the bigger question remained. 3 people, bound by violence and something deeper, sitting in a broken house as the town converged. What came next? Sheriff Daniels was first through the door, gun drawn, taking in the scene with professional calm. Behind him came half the town. It seemed drawn by drama and gunfire. "Garrison gang," Jake said simply. "Came for the girl." The sheriff nodded, directing his men to deal with the intruders. 2 dead, 1 groaning in pain. "We'll need statements, but first—" He looked at Jake's wound. "Doc, get in here," as the doctor worked, as the crowd gawked and whispered. Clara kept her arms around Lily and her eyes on Jake. They'd survived. They'd protected what mattered. Everything else could wait until morning. Dawn broke gray and tentative over Cedar Ridge, as if the sun itself was uncertain about illuminating the violence of the night. Clara hadn't slept. keeping vigil between Jake's bedside at the doctor's office and the sheriff's station where she'd given her statement 3 times over. The garrison gang's attempt had failed, but at a cost. 2 of the attackers lay in the undertaker's parlor, while the third, jaw broken by Clara's rifle stock, sat shackled in the jail cell, awaiting transport to Fort Worth for trial. Jake's wound, while not mortal, was serious enough to keep him bedridden for days. "You should go home," Jake said weakly as Clara adjusted his blanket. "Lily needs you. Lily's with Mrs. Chen at the laundry. She's teaching her to fold shirts." Clara dipped a cloth in cool water, pressing it to his fevered brow. "She's safe. And you? When did you last eat? Sleep? When did you last stop fretting about others and worry about yourself?" Despite the pain, Jake's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Stubborn woman. So I've been told." The door opened, admitting Sheriff Daniels. His face was grim, and Clara's stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Wire from Fort Worth. The Rangers are coming, but—" He hesitated. "The garrison gang's bigger than we thought. The prisoner's been talking, trying to save his neck. Says there's a dozen more, maybe 20. Says they won't stop until they settle the score." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. 20 men. Could be bluster. Man facing the noose will say anything. But the Rangers are taking it serious. The sheriff looked between them. "They're suggesting witness protection. Move you and Lily somewhere safe until they can round up the whole gang." "Where?" Clara asked, though she already dreaded the answer. "Austin, maybe, or Houston. Somewhere big enough to disappear in." "No." Jake tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "She's not running. We've discussed this." "That was before we knew it was 20 men," the sheriff pointed out. "No disrespect, Thornton, but you can barely stand. And Mrs. Matthews can't fight off an army alone." "Then we get help," Clara said suddenly. Both men looked at her. "This isn't just about us anymore. The garrison gang's been stealing children throughout the territory. How many families have they destroyed? How many parents are grieving tonight because of them? What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop playing defense." Clara stood, pacing the small room. "Miguel's grandson, the minister's son, they rode with us that night. There are good people in this town, people who are tired of living in fear. What if we gave them something to fight for?" The sheriff shook his head. "Folks are scared. Mrs. Matthews. Helping search for a missing child is one thing. Standing against an outlaw gang is another. Then we make them understand that it's the same thing. Today it was Lily. Tomorrow it could be their daughter, their son." She turned to Jake. "You know horses, cattle. You know how predators work. They pick off the weak, the isolated. But when the herd stands together, they find easier prey." Jake finished. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You want to fort up. Make Cedar Ridge too hard a target." "Exactly." Sheriff Daniels rubbed his jaw. "It's not a bad notion, but organizing folks, training them, that takes time we might not have." "Then we'd better start now," Clara said. The town meeting that evening was packed. Word had spread about the night's events and the sheriff's revelation about the gang's size. Fear filled the church like smoke, visible in darting glances and whispered conversations. Clara stood at the pulpit, an unlikely general in a patched dress. Lily sat in the front pew, small and solemn between Mrs. Chen and Miguel Herrera. "I know you're scared," Clara began, her voice carrying over the murmur. "I'm scared too. 3 weeks ago, they took my daughter. Last night, they came to take her again. They failed because I wasn't alone. Jake Thornton stood with me. But he's one man, and he's wounded now because of his courage." She paused, meeting eyes around the room. "How many of you have children, grandchildren? How many of you came west for a better life, only to find that lawlessness followed you here?" Nods, reluctant but present. "The Rangers are coming, but they could be weeks away. The garrison gang won't wait that long. They'll come for my Lily. Yes, but they won't stop there. They never have. These are the men who've been stealing children across Texas, selling them like cattle. Today it's my daughter. Tomorrow, whose? What would you have us do?" called out Josiah Barnes, the blacksmith. "We're shopkeepers and farmers, not gunfighters." "Neither was I," Clara replied. "3 weeks ago. I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but I learned because I had to, because my daughter's life depended on it. Now all our children's lives might depend on us standing together." "She's right." The voice came from the back. "Doctor." Marcus Webb stood, his usual reserve cracking. 2 years ago, a child disappeared from Millerton, 2 towns over. My niece, 8 years old. Never found her, never caught who took her. If there's a chance to stop these monsters. "And what happens when 20 armed outlaws ride in?" demanded Thomas Garrett. "The bank manager. We'll be slaughtered." "Maybe," Clara conceded. "Or maybe 20 outlaws will think twice when they see a town full of people willing to fight. When they realize that taking 1 child means facing 50 guns, not 2. The debate raged for an hour. Fear battled anger. Self-preservation warred with community spirit. Through it all, Clara stood firm, answering objections, painting a vision of Cedar Ridge as a fortress against the lawlessness that plagued the frontier. Finally, Reverend Coleman raised his hand for silence. "Mrs. Matthews has asked us to stand together. I believe Christ himself would ask no less. Who among us will answer the call?" Miguel Herrera stood first. "I have 4 granddaughters. I will fight." Dr. Webb joined him. "For my niece and all the lost children." One by one, others rose. Not all. Fear kept many in their seats. But enough to make a difference. "Well," Sheriff Daniels said, looking somewhat stunned. "Looks like we've got ourselves a militia." The next days passed in a blur of preparation. Jake, despite doctor's orders, dragged himself from bed to help train the volunteers. Clara organized the women, setting up medical stations, planning defensive positions, creating a communication system using church bells and signal mirrors. The blacksmith turned out plowshares into ammunition. The general store became an armory. Even Mrs. Wilson, who'd been so cutting about Clara's reputation, showed up with her husband's old cavalry rifle. "I still think you're trouble," she said bluntly. "But those men threatening children is worse trouble." Lily became the town's unofficial mascot, her bravery in the face of kidnapping inspiring others. She helped roll bandages, carried water to the workers, and once, Clara caught her showing other children the hiding spots Jake had taught her. "We're making them targets," Clara said to Jake one evening as they watched the sunset from the church steps. He was still pale, moving carefully, but insisted on being part of the preparations. "We're making them citizens," he corrected. "People who fight for their home, for each other. That's how civilization really comes to the frontier. Not through law books or badges, but through folks deciding that here, now, we make a stand." "Very philosophical for a horse wrangler. I read sometimes," he said dryly. Then, more seriously, "Clara, whatever happens, I want you to know." "Don't." She put a hand on his arm. "Don't talk like you're saying goodbye. Someone needs to. If this goes bad, then we'll face it together. That's what partners do." He covered her hand with his. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "You answered a mother's cry for help," she said simply. Everything else followed from that single act of decency. They sat in comfortable silence, watching children play in the street. The same street where Clara had screamed for help 3 weeks ago. So much had changed. The town that had whispered about the widow woman now looked to her for leadership. The man who'd kept to himself now sat beside her, their connection acknowledged if not yet named. "They're coming," Jake said suddenly, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Tomorrow, maybe the day after. I can feel it." Clara followed his look to where dust clouds gathered in the distance. "How do you know?" "Same way I know a storm's coming. The air changes. Birds fly different." He squeezed her hand. "Are you ready?" "No," she admitted. "But I'll be ready when they get here." That night, Clara tucked Lily into bed in the reinforced cellar beneath the church, where all the town's children would shelter when the attack came. Other mothers were doing the same, creating a makeshift nursery guarded by the town's oldest men and women. Those who couldn't fight but could still shoot if the worst happened. "Will the bad men come back, Mama?" Lily asked. "Maybe, sweetheart, but if they do, the whole town will stop them. Even mean Mrs. Wilson? Even her?" Lily considered this. "Mister, Jake says courage is being scared but doing right anyway." "Mister, Jake's a wise man. Are you going to marry him?" The question, so innocent and direct, caught Clara off guard. That's not... Why would you ask that?" "Because he looks at you the way Papa used to, and you look at him the same way." Lily yawned. "I think Papa would like him." Clara kissed her daughter's forehead, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. From the mouths of babes, she thought. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it a dust cloud on the southern horizon that grew steadily larger. The church bells rang out the warning pattern, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The militia Clara had helped create took their positions, fear and determination mixing on their faces. Jake found her at her assigned post on the hotel roof, rifle ready. "Remember what I taught you?" he said. "Breathe steady, squeeze, don't pull, and—" "Jake," she turned to face him. "In case we don't get another chance." He kissed her. It was awkward, desperate, perfect. 2 broken people finding wholeness in each other while the world prepared to explode around them. When they parted, Clara saw her own feelings reflected in his eyes. "We'll have that chance," he said firmly. "And 1,000 more after it, I promise." Then the garrison gang crested the ridge, 20 men strong as promised, and there was no more time for promises, only for keeping the ones already made. The garrison gang rode in like a plague of locusts, dust swirling around their horses' hooves, sunlight glinting off rifle barrels and pistol butts. 20 men, as promised, faces hard as the desert stone, led by a giant of a man with a scar running from eyebrow to jaw. "That's Big Tom Garrison himself," Jake murmured beside Clara. "Didn't think he'd come personal." From the street below, Sheriff Daniels stepped out, badge catching the morning light. "That's far enough. Garrison, this town's closed to you and yours." Big Tom laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Since when does Cedar Ridge grow a spine? Sheriff, we're here for the woman and the brat. Give them over, and we'll leave peaceful like." "Can't do that." "Can't." Garrison's eyes swept the seemingly empty street, the shuttered windows. "Or won't. How many guns you got hiding in those buildings? Sheriff, 5, 10? We got 20, all seasoned fighters. Try us and find out." The sheriff replied steadily. Clara held her breath, finger resting on the trigger guard as Jake had taught her. Around the town, she knew 50 others were doing the same, shopkeepers and farmers, mothers and grandmothers, all waiting for the signal. Garrison studied the town for a long moment. Then he smiled, cold and calculating. "Boys, looks like Cedar Ridge wants to play hero. Let's teach them what happens to heroes in the real world." The first shot came from one of Garrison's men, shattering the window of Henderson's store. That was all the provocation needed. Cedar Ridge erupted. Gunfire exploded from a dozen positions. Clara sighted down her rifle, picking a target, breathing steady as Jake had taught her. The man was drawing on the sheriff. She squeezed the trigger, and he spun away, clutching his shoulder. "Good shot," Jake said, already firing at another outlaw. "Keep them moving. Don't let them fort up." The battle was chaos, smoke and noise, screams of men and horses. The garrison gang, expecting easy prey, found themselves in a crossfire. They scattered, seeking cover, but Clara's militia had chosen their positions well. Every alley, every corner had been considered. "The bank!" someone shouted. "They're going for the bank!" Clara swung her rifle, seeing 3 outlaws dismounting near the building. But before they could reach the door, gunfire erupted from inside. Thomas Garrett, the bank manager who'd questioned the wisdom of fighting, was defending his domain with a fury born of violated trust. "Behind us!" Jake warned. Clara spun to see 2 men climbing onto the hotel roof from the back. Jake's pistol barked twice, and one fell. The other dove behind a chimney, firing wildly. Clara dropped flat, bullets whining overhead like angry wasps. Stay down! Jake rolled to a better position, keeping the attacker pinned. But Clara had spotted movement, another outlaw climbing up, trying to flank Jake. No time to warn him. She brought her rifle up, fired. The man cursed, lost his grip, fell. The battle raged through the morning. The garrison gang was better armed, better trained. But they'd expected a town of sheep, not wolves. Every building was a fortress, every citizen a defender. When they tried to burn out the defenders, bucket brigades appeared as if by magic. When they attempted to storm positions, they met disciplined volleys. Clara lost track of individual moments, the battle becoming a blur of smoke and sound. Her world narrowed to sight picture, trigger squeeze, finding the next target. Jake stayed close, watching her back as she watched his, their partnership extending seamlessly from training to combat. "Clara!" His warning came almost too late. An outlaw had made the roof, gun swinging toward her. She rolled, brought her rifle up, but knew she'd be too slow. The shot that saved her came from below. Misses. Wilson stood in the street, her late husband's cavalry rifle smoking in her hands, looking as surprised as anyone at what she'd done. "Nobody threatens our children," the older woman shouted, then ducked back into cover as bullets sought her. The tide turned slowly but surely. The garrison gang, bloodied and confused, began to pull back. They'd lost half their number. Dead, wounded, or captured. Big Tom himself bled from a graze on his neck, his fine coat torn and dusty. "This ain't over," he roared. "You hear me, woman? This ain't over." But even as he shouted defiance, he was retreating, his remaining men covering their withdrawal. They left their dead and wounded behind, riding hard for the horizon. "Let 'em go," Sheriff Daniels called as some of the militia prepared to pursue. "We've won enough for one day." Clara slumped against the roof's edge, rifle heavy in her trembling hands. The silence after battle was almost as shocking as the noise had been. Slowly, citizens emerged from their positions, looking dazed, disbelieving. "We did it," someone said, wonder in their voice. "We actually did it." Jake's hand found Clara's shoulder. "You all right?" "I think so." She looked up at him, saw blood on his shirt. "You're hurt." Old wound pulled a bit, nothing serious. He helped her to her feet. "Let's go find Lily." They climbed down to streets transformed. Bodies lay in the dust, mostly outlaws, but Clara saw Miguel helping carry the minister's son, blood on the young man's leg. "Doctor." Webb moved between the wounded with grim efficiency, aided by women who'd traded rifles for bandages. At the church, Clara found organized chaos. Children were being reunited with parents, tears of relief mixing with leftover terror. And there, sitting on the steps with remarkable composure, was Lily. "Mama!" She flew into Clara's arms. "I heard all the shooting. Mrs. Chen said you were being very brave." "We all were, sweetheart, the whole town." Lily noticed Jake then, and her face split into a grin, despite everything. "You kept Mama safe." "She kept herself safe," Jake corrected. "Your Mama's the bravest woman I know." The rest of the day passed in a haze of aftermath. The wounded were tended, the dead counted. 4 outlaws had been killed, 6 wounded and captured. Cedar Ridge had lost 1, Josiah Barnes's nephew, barely 18, who'd stood his ground at the livery stable until the end. As evening fell, the town gathered in the church, not for a meeting this time, but for something between a memorial and a celebration. They'd faced the storm and survived. "We showed them," Thomas Garrett said, sporting a bandage around his head. "Showed them Cedar Ridge won't be pushed around. The Rangers will be here tomorrow," Sheriff Daniels announced. "They'll take the prisoners, track down what's left of the gang. But what we did today, that was all us." Reverend Coleman led a prayer for young Barnes, then for the town's continued safety. But Clara barely heard it. She was watching Jake across the room, seeing how he favored his side, the paleness beneath his tan. When the service ended, she intercepted him at the door. "You're going to the doctor, now." "Clara, no arguments. Lily, tell Mister." Jake, he needs to listen to his elders. You're not that much older than me, Jake protested, but he was smiling. Listen to Mama, Lily said solemnly. She shot outlaws today. That means she's the boss. At the doctor's office, Webb confirmed what Clara had feared. The wound had partially reopened during the fight, though not dangerously so. You're lucky, the doctor said, cleaning and rebandaging. An inch to the left and we'd be having a different conversation. What were you thinking, fighting in your condition? I was thinking about keeping people safe, Jake replied, his eyes on Clara. When the doctor finished, Clara walked Jake back to the boarding house. Lily had fallen asleep in Jake's arms, worn out by the day's events. The street was quiet now, though armed citizens still kept watch from key positions. Stay, Jake said suddenly as they reached his door. Jake, not like that. I mean, well, maybe like that eventually, but... He took a breath. I've got 2 beds in there. You and Lily take one. I need to know you're safe. Both of you. After today, I can't... His voice broke slightly, and Clara understood. The battle was won, but the fear remained. The possibility of loss, made real by violence, left shadows that would take time to fade. All right, she said softly. We'll stay. They made an odd family that night. The widow, the gunfighter, and the child, finding peace in proximity. Lily curled between them on the spare bed, one small hand clutching Clara's nightgown, the other reaching out to touch Jake's arm, as if assuring herself that both her protectors were there. Jake? Clara whispered in the darkness. What you said on the roof about chances. I meant it, every word. Good, because I think Henry would approve. Lily was right about that. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then, my Mary would approve too. She always said I needed someone to keep me from brooding too much. They didn't say the words yet. Love was too big, too fragile for a night shadowed by violence. But it was there in the darkness between them, growing like a seed in desert soil, waiting for the right moment to bloom. Morning brought the Rangers. As promised, Captain Samuel Morrison, a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same stone as the landscape, surveyed the battlefield with professional interest. 20 against a town, he mused. And you won. That's something for the history books. We had good teachers, Clara said, glancing at Jake. So I heard. Thornton, isn't it? Heard about you. Good man to have in a fight. Morrison turned to the sheriff. We'll take the prisoners. Track down Garrison and what's left of his gang. Shouldn't take long. Wounded men on tired horses don't get far. What about us? Clara asked. Will they come back? Doubtful. Garrison's lost too many men, too much face. He'll be looking for easier prey, at least until we catch him. The ranger tipped his hat. You've made Cedar Ridge a hard target, ma'am. That's the best protection there is. As the rangers prepared to leave with their prisoners, one of them, barely older than the boy they'd buried yesterday, approached Clara. Ma'am, I wanted to say, what you did here, organizing folks, making a stand. My sister was taken 2 years back. Never found her. But maybe, because of what you've done, other sisters won't be taken. That means something. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. I'm sorry about your sister. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for fighting. As the Rangers rode out, Cedar Ridge began the slow process of returning to normal. But it was a new normal. The town that had whispered about the widow now looked at her with respect. The people who'd lived in fear now walked taller, knowing they could defend themselves. So, what happens now? Jake asked that evening. They sat on Clara's repaired porch, watching Lily play with the minister's daughter, 2 children who'd survived something no child should have to. Now we live, Clara said simply. We rebuild, we go forward, together, if you're willing. Jake took her hand, and his smile was answer enough. The West was still wild, still dangerous. But here in Cedar Ridge, in this small circle of light carved from the darkness, they'd found something worth fighting for, something worth building on. The desert sunset painted the sky in shades of hope, and Clara Matthews, No longer just a widow. No longer just a survivor, but a woman who'd found her strength and her heart in the crucible of the frontier, held tight to the hand of the man who'd helped her discover both. A week after the battle, Cedar Ridge bore its scars like badges of honor. Bullet holes pocked the buildings, and fresh lumber showed where walls had been repaired. But the town moved with new purpose, citizens nodding to each other with the understanding of those who'd stood together against the storm. The courthouse was packed for the trial of the captured outlaws. Judge William Prescott had ridden in from Austin, a stern man with eyes like flint and a reputation for swift justice. Clara sat in the front row, Jake beside her, as witness after witness testified about the Garrison Gang's crimes, not just the attack on Cedar Ridge, but years of kidnappings across the territory. Mrs. Matthews, the prosecutor called. "Please take the stand." Clara rose, smoothing her dress, a new one, gifted by the grateful townswomen. She'd protested, but Mrs. Wilson had insisted. "Heroes don't wear patched calico," she'd said firmly. "State your name for the record." "Clara Matthews." "Mrs. Matthews, please tell the court about the night your daughter was taken." Clara spoke steadily, recounting that terrible night, the search, the rescue. When she described shooting one of the kidnappers to save Lily, several women in the gallery nodded approval. "And the defendant, Robert Garrison?" The prosecutor indicated the man with the broken jaw, brother to Big Tom. "Did he participate in the second attack on your home?" "He did. He was the one who asked where my daughter was. He came to take her again." The defense attorney, brought in from Fort Worth, tried to paint Clara as a vengeful woman, a mother whose fear had turned to bloodlust, but Judge Prescott cut him short. "Counselor, a mother defending her child from kidnappers isn't vengeance. It's justice in its purest form. Continue with relevant questions or sit down." When Jake testified, he was brief and factual, describing the gang's tactics, their admission of selling children across the border. His quiet authority carried more weight than any dramatics could have. The verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. The sentences ranged from 20 years hard labor to hanging for those who'd killed during their crimes. As they led the prisoners away, Robert Garrison turned to Clara. "My brother will come for you," he snarled. "Big Tom, don't forget." "Neither do I," Clara replied evenly. Outside the courthouse, the town erupted in celebration. Justice, real justice, had come to Cedar Ridge. Sheriff Daniels shook Jake's hand, then surprised everyone by embracing Clara. "You did it," he said gruffly. "You woke this town up, made us remember what we're fighting for." That evening, there was a dance in the church hall, the first such gathering since the battle. It was part celebration, part healing. Clara stood at the edge, watching couples whirl past. When Jake appeared at her elbow, "Dance with me? I don't know if that's proper. People will talk. Let them." He held out his hand. "We've faced down outlaws together. I think we can handle a few gossips." Clara took his hand, let him lead her onto the floor. The fiddler was playing a slow waltz, and Jake moved with surprising grace for a man more used to saddles than dance floors. "Where did you learn to dance?" she asked. "Mary taught me, said every man should know how to make his woman feel beautiful." His hand tightened on her waist. She was right. They moved together, the rest of the room fading away. Clara was aware of the whispers, the knowing looks, but found she truly didn't care. She'd faced death for this town. She'd earned the right to a little happiness. "Clara," Jake said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "Yes?" "The Rangers offered me a job, scout position, tracking what's left of the border gangs." Clara stumbled slightly. "Oh." "I turned it down." She looked up at him, hope warring with disbelief. "You did?" "I've been drifting for 7 years, running from ghosts, looking for something I couldn't name." His dark eyes held hers. "I'm tired of running. I found what I was looking for. Jake, I know it's only been a few weeks. I know you're still grieving Henry. Still healing from everything that's happened. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance to stay, to build something here. With you and Lily." Clara's throat was tight with emotion. "What would you do? For work, I mean." "Henderson's looking to expand his freight business. Needs someone to manage the horses, lead the wagon trains. And the town council's talking about forming a permanent militia. Wants someone to train them proper." He smiled slightly. "Seems I've got a reputation now. Quite a step down from the Rangers." "No," he said firmly. "It's a step up. Rangers chase outlaws. Here, I'd be building something, protecting something worth protecting." The music ended, but they stayed close, hands still clasped. Around them, couples separated, but Clara couldn't bring herself to move. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Yes to the chance. Yes to staying. Yes to seeing what we might build." His smile transformed his face, years falling away to reveal the man he'd been before loss scarred him. "Mrs. Matthews, I do believe that's the finest thing I've heard in 7 years." "Mr. Thornton," she replied, matching his formal tone. "I do believe you're right." They might have kissed then, right there in the church hall with half the town watching. But Lily's voice interrupted. "Mama, Mr. Jake! Look what Mrs. Chen taught me." She demonstrated a spinning dance move that sent her braids flying. Jake caught her hands, spun her properly, and her delighted laughter filled the hall. Clara watched them, her daughter and this man who'd bled for them both, and felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, not yet, but the promise of it. The next morning brought news. The Rangers had cornered Big Tom Garrison and his remaining men in a box canyon 50 miles south. The gunfight had been brief and decisive. Tom Garrison would threaten no more children, terrorize no more families. "It's over," Jake said, reading the telegram at the sheriff's office. "Really over." Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The shadow that had hung over them since that night was finally gone. They could move forward without looking back. "Mr. Thornton," Henderson called from across the street. "You ready to look at those horses?" Jake glanced at Clara. "Want to come? Lily might enjoy seeing them." And so began their new pattern. Jake threw himself into his work, proving as talented with business as he was with a gun. Clara continued at the store but also took on teaching duties, helping the town's children with their letters and sums. Lily bloomed under the stability, no longer jumping at shadows, no longer asking if the bad men would return. The town, too, was changing. The successful defense had drawn attention. New families arrived, drawn by stories of a community that stood together. A newspaper started up. A second merchant opened shop, and there was talk of building a proper school. "We should expand the militia training," Jake suggested one evening. He'd taken to having supper with Clara and Lily most nights, an arrangement that surprised no one. New folks need to learn what we learned. Every citizen a defender. Clara agreed, though hopefully they'll never need to use it. Better to have the skill and not need it. Jake said, then, more quietly, "Clara, there's something I've been wanting to ask." But before he could continue, a knock came at the door. Clara opened it to find Reverend Coleman, hat in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a matter needs discussing. May I come in?" They gathered around the table, Lily sent to play in her corner. The Reverend looked uncomfortable, clearing his throat several times before speaking. "I'll be direct. There's been talk about you two, about the propriety of your friendship." Clara felt her spine stiffen. "I see. Now, I want you to know I don't hold with gossip. You've both done more for this town than most, but," he sighed, "some of the ladies are saying it sets a poor example. An unmarried man and woman spending so much time together. Those same ladies who hid while Clara organized the town's defense." Jake's voice was dangerously quiet. "Jake," Clara warned. To the Reverend, "What would you have us do?" "Well," Coleman shifted awkwardly, "I suppose the proper thing would be to formalize the arrangement, if your intentions are honorable. That is." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. Reverend Coleman, Are you suggesting we marry to quiet gossips? I'm suggesting, he said carefully, that two people who've faced death together, who've built trust and partnership, who clearly care for each other and for young Lily, perhaps those people might consider making official what everyone can already see. He stood, donning his hat. Think about it. The church is always available when you're ready. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I think Henry would approve. A good man recognizing another good man. And Clara, you deserve happiness. Don't let pride or propriety stand in its way. After he left, silence filled the kitchen. Lily had stopped playing, watching the adults with curious eyes. Well, Clara said finally, that was unexpected. Jake rubbed his neck. A gesture she'd learned meant he was thinking hard. Clara, I had planned. That is, I wanted to court you proper. Take time. Do things right. And now the Reverend's turned matchmaker. Seems so. He met her eyes. Question is, was he wrong? Clara's breath caught. Jake. He stood, came around the table, knelt beside her chair. I'm not doing this because of gossip or propriety. I'm doing it because every morning, my first thought is whether you're safe. Every decision I make, I wonder what you'd think. When Lily laughs, I want to be there to hear it. When you're sad, I want to be the one to comfort you. From her corner, Lily piped up, Are you proposing Mr. Jake? Lily, Clara gasped. But Jake smiled. I suppose I am. Little miss, what do you think? Should I marry your mama? Lily scrambled over, throwing her arms around Jake's neck. Yes, then you can stay forever and teach me to ride and read me stories. Well, I guess that's one vote in favor, Jake said, his eyes twinkling. Clara, what's your vote? Clara looked at them, this man who'd saved them, who'd stayed when he could have run, who made her feel safe and cherished and alive. Her daughter, who'd lost one father but had found another who'd chosen them both. You know, she said slowly, the Reverend made some good points. He did. About not letting pride or propriety stand in the way of happiness? She touched his face, feeling the roughness of stubble, the warmth of skin. Yes, Jake Thornton, I'll marry you. Not for the gossips, not for propriety, but because I can't imagine facing tomorrow without you. He kissed her then, right there in the kitchen with Lily cheering and the lamp casting golden light over them all. It wasn't the courtship either had imagined. Henry had wooed her with flowers and poetry, while Jake's first wife had known him since childhood. But it was theirs, forged in fire and courage and the choice to build rather than just survive. When? Jake asked when they parted. Soon. Clara decided, we've waited long enough for happiness. Next Sunday, Lily suggested. Then we can have cake. They laughed, and the sound filled the small house with warmth. Outside, Cedar Ridge settled into evening, safe and growing and forever changed by one woman's cry in the night, and one man's decision to answer it. Sunday morning dawned clear and golden, as if the heavens themselves blessed the union about to take place. Clara stood before the small mirror in her bedroom, pinning up her hair with trembling fingers. She wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved through years of frontier hardship, now altered to fit her own frame. You look beautiful, Mama, Lily said from the bed, already dressed in her new blue dress with white ribbon trim, like a princess in the stories. Thank you, sweetheart. Clara turned from the mirror, kneeling to straighten Lily's collar. Are you happy about today? The happiest. Lily bounced slightly. Mister, Jake will be Papa Jake, and we'll be a real family again. Clara's eyes misted. We've always been a real family. You and I know, but now we'll be bigger. Lily's small face grew serious. Papa Henry won't mind, will he, in heaven? Clara gathered her daughter close. I think Papa Henry sent Jake to us, to keep us safe, to make us happy. He loved us that much. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Wilson entered, and Clara was still surprised by the warmth in the older woman's face. The battle had changed many things, not least the heart of Cedar Ridge's most notorious gossip. "The church is full," she reported. "Half the territories come to see the wedding of the year." She studied Clara with approval. "You've earned this happiness, my dear. Don't let anyone tell you different." The walk to the church felt both endless and too swift. Clara's heart hammered as she stood at the door. Lily's hand in hers. Through the gap, she could see the packed pews, the flowers, wild flowers gathered by the townswomen, and there, at the altar, Jake. He wore a new black suit, his hair neatly trimmed, boots polished to a shine, but it was his face that caught her. The wonder there, the joy, the love undisguised. When the organ began and she started down the aisle, his eyes never left hers. Sheriff Daniels stood as Jake's best man, while Mrs. Chen had agreed to stand with Clara. The unconventional choice had raised eyebrows, but Clara had insisted. The Chinese woman had shown more true friendship than most during her trials. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Coleman began, his voice carrying over the packed church. "We gather today to witness something rare and precious. Two souls finding each other across loss and hardship, choosing to build anew on the ashes of the past." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When it came time for vows, Jake spoke first, his voice steady and sure. "Clara, you gave me purpose when I'd forgotten what it meant. You showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. I promise to stand beside you, to protect you and Lily, to build with you a life worthy of the chances we've been given. I promise to love you through whatever storms may come, to be the man you and Lily deserve." Clara's voice was thick with tears as she responded. "Jake, you answered a cry for help and became our salvation. You showed me strength I didn't know I had, stood with me when others turned away. I promise to be your partner in all things, to make a home where your heart can rest, to love you with the fierce devotion you've earned. I promise to help you remember joy, as you've helped me remember hope. And I promise," Lily piped up unexpectedly, "to be good and help with chores and not put frogs in the water bucket anymore." Laughter rippled through the church. Jake knelt to Lily's level, his face serious. "And I promise to be the best Papa Jake I can be, to teach you and protect you and love you as my own." "The rings?" Reverend Coleman asked, smiling. They were simple bands, crafted by the blacksmith from gold coins Jake had saved. As they exchanged them, Clara felt the weight of the moment, not ending something, but beginning. "By the power vested in me by God and the state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jake, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was gentle, reverent, a seal on promises made. The church erupted in cheers, and as they turned to face the congregation, Clara saw not judgment but joy on most faces. They had earned this, paid for it in blood and courage. The reception was held in the church hall, tables groaning under the weight of food contributed by the townspeople. Clara was surprised to see cowboys from neighboring ranches, merchants from other towns, even a ranger or two who'd heard Jake's story and come to wish him well. "Never thought I'd see Jake Thornton smile like that," one grizzled cowhand told Clara. "You've worked a miracle, ma'am. He saved us first." Clara replied, "I just returned the favor." As the sun began to set, Jake found her on the church steps, taking a moment's respite from the celebration. "Regrets?" he asked, sitting beside her. "None. You? Only that it took so long to find you." He took her hand, thumb rubbing over the new ring. "I have something to show you." He led her to the edge of town, where a plot of land stretched toward the hills. "Henderson sold it to me yesterday. 5 acres, with water rights and good soil. Thought we might build something permanent." Clara looked at the land, their land, and imagined a house there. Not just walls and a roof, but a home. Garden plots, a barn for Jake's horses, perhaps a tree swing for Lily. "It's perfect." "It will be," Jake agreed. "Give me time, and I'll build you a proper house. No more leaking roofs or drafty walls." "I don't need fancy. Jake, I need solid. I need safe. I need you." "You have me," he promised, "for whatever comes." They stood together, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of rose and gold, when Lily came running. "Mama, Papa Jake, they're cutting the cake! Papa Jake!" The words settled into Clara's heart like a blessing. She looked at her family, for that's what they were now, truly and completely, and felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Back at the reception, they found the cake, 3 layers of perfection created by the minister's wife. As they cut it together, Lily squeezed between them, insisting on helping, and the photographer captured the moment, the gunslinger, the widow, and the child, faces bright with laughter and love. "Speech!" someone called, and others took up the cry. Jake looked uncomfortable, but Clara squeezed his hand encouragingly. He cleared his throat, addressing the packed hall. "Most of you know I'm not much for words, but I need to say this. 7 years ago, I lost everything. Thought my life was over, that I'd drift until the desert finally claimed me. Then one night, I heard a woman cry for help, and everything changed." He looked at Clara, then at Lily. "This town, these people, this family, you've given me back my life. I promise to spend whatever years God grants me earning that gift." Clara stood, surprising everyone, including herself. 3 weeks ago, I was nobody, a widow scratching out survival, watching my daughter grow up in the shadow of fear. Then evil came to our door, and I learned something. We're only as alone as we choose to be. This town rallied to save my daughter. Jake bled for her. You all stood with us against the darkness. She raised her glass of punch. To Cedar Ridge, not just a place, but a people. To second chances and the courage to take them. To family, both born and chosen. And to love that comes when you least expect it but need it most. The toast was drunk with enthusiasm, and the party continued until well past dark. Finally, as the moon rose full and bright, the newlyweds prepared to leave. Lily would stay with Mrs. Chen for 3 days, while Jake and Clara took a brief wedding trip to the hot springs 2 towns over, a gift from the townspeople. "I'll be good," Lily promised, hugging them both. "And when you come back, we'll start our new life." "We've already started it, sweetheart," Clara said, kissing her daughter's head, as they rode out in Henderson's best wagon. Clara looked back at Cedar Ridge, the town that had judged her, then embraced her, the place where she'd found her strength and her heart. Jake's arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm. "No looking back," he said gently, "only forward." "I'm not looking back," Clara corrected, settling against him. "I'm remembering, so I never forget how far we've come." The night wrapped around them like a blanket, stars brilliant in the clear sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, but it held no menace now. They were no longer prey running scared in the darkness. They were survivors who'd chosen to become builders, warriors who'd earned their peace. "I love you," Jake said suddenly. The words new enough to still surprise them both. "Wanted to make sure I said it at least once more today." "Only once?" Clara teased, her heart full to bursting. "Once an hour, then once a minute if you prefer. How about just when you feel it? Then I'll never stop saying it." They drove on through the night toward their future. 2 wounded souls made whole by courage, circumstance, and the choice to fight for love in a hard land. Behind them, Cedar Ridge settled into sleep, safe and strong. Ahead, the hot springs waited, and beyond that, a life built on foundations of tested steel and proven hearts. In her last glimpse of town, Clara saw a light in the window of their soon-to-be former house. Lily, probably, saying goodnight to her doll and dreaming of the family she'd helped create through her innocent faith that broken things could be mended. And she was right, Clara thought, tightening her hold on Jake's hand. Sometimes all it took was someone willing to try, someone brave enough to answer a cry in the night, and someone wise enough to know that love wasn't a luxury in the frontier. It was a necessity, as vital as water in the desert, as precious as gold in the hills. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient witnesses to another story of loss transformed to joy. And Clara Matthews Thornton rode toward tomorrow with her husband, her heart singing a song of gratitude that echoed across the vast Texas night. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. We'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale. Are you listening during your commute, relaxing at home, or perhaps on a long drive? Please subscribe to our channel From Wild West and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's connect over these frontier stories of courage and love.